made to you so special? Nothing. I'm just a kid from Brooklyn. I was from Brooklyn.
Brooklyn!
Were you scared of that? No, not at all, huh?
Nope. I'm from Brooklyn.
You're from Brooklyn, huh?
I just wanna rap. Okay, guys, Frank Style, just a guy from Brooklyn. And a few years back, when my channel was at its infancy, I did a huge vampire ranking. I did something like 15 movies, and it actually was the most successful of my videos at that time. But since then, there's been some big vampire movies that have come out. And on top of that, I've seen some more classics. And so I'm here to bring you my vampire movie ranking, revisited, updated, and maximized. As always, we got to go through my 2 rules. Rule number 1 is spoilers. Most of these movies are extremely old. The new ones, obviously, I would never try and spoil. Medium spoiler warning here. Rule number 2 is, as always, this is a favorites list, not a best list. So the best way you can come back at me about my list is to show me yours through the comments section. Kicking things off, my lone honorable mention is The Monster Squad. Came out in 1987. Which answers the question, what if the Goonies and the Universal Monsters had a baby and it was raised in the 80s? A group of 12-year-olds who formed a Monsters fan club called The Monster Squad have to attempt to save their hometown from Count Dracula and his group of monsters when they show up for real. This is very PG and entry level. This is your California roll. This is your rum and coke. This is your missionary position. And yet it's so much fun and the effects are top notch. Coming in at number 25 is The Last Voyage of the Demeter. Came out in 2023. The crew of the merchant ship Demeter set sail from Carpathia to London to deliver a cargo of 50 unmarked wooden crates. However, they soon discover they're not alone, as Dracula's unholy presence turns the ship into a nightmarish fight for survival. So we have a single chapter in the Dracula novel expanded into a full-length film. Dracula is in a severely weakened state, but against this group of sailors, they are barbecue chicken with all the fixings. Dracula was even smart enough to pack away a Transylvanian woman as a snack. The crew discover this living bag of Doritos, and after a few transfusions, she lets them know what they're up against. The way Dracula overpowers his victims and literally drains the life out of them is pretty unnerving, and that's what I like about the film. What I don't like is Dracula himself.
You one ugly motherfucker.
Because of this, I see the movie as more creature feature and less Dracula film. It's basically Alien on a boat, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Coming in at number 24 is Blade Trinity. Came out in 2004. I fully acknowledge that Blade Trinity is a terrible Blade movie, a terrible vampire movie, and a terrible movie overall. And that's the point. It's a total guilty pleasure for me. In order to defeat Blade, the vampires decide to unearth Dracula himself, who, if you didn't know, is a powerful character in Marvel Comics. Blade gets some new allies, like Whistler's daughter, played by Jessica Biel, and Ryan Reynolds plays Hannibal King. Reynolds is basically Deadpool without the healing factor and the fourth wall stuff.
Say we're successful, say we wipe out all the vampires. What then, huh? And somehow I don't picture you teaching karate at the local Y.
Dracula is played by Dominic Purcell of Prison Break fame. And this movie is uneven in just about every way. Even crazier is all the behind-the-scenes stuff. We're talking racism, taxes, Snipes smoking weed all day like he's Willie Nelson, refusing to shoot scenes, and getting into beefs with just about everyone. And the best part is he stayed in character the whole time. He even communicated with Post-its, signed Blade. Coming in at number 23 is Dracula Untold. came out in 2014. A reimagined origin story for Dracula in a more 300 style setting, minus the CGI six-packs of course. Prince Dracula has brokered a peace for his people's protection from the Ottoman Empire. However, when Sultan Mehmed II demands 1,000 of the country's boys, including Vlad's son, for his army, Vlad makes a deal with a monster that'll enable him to defeat the Turks. It's visually stunning how he can turn not into just a single bat, but thousands who can obliterate armies in minutes. I enjoy it for what it is, full well knowing that this is not Dracula's true origin, nor is it really horror to be frank, and not just because that's my name. Coming in at number 22 is Fright Night Part 2, came out in 1988. At face value, this is a forgettable sequel. It pales in comparison to the original, and it's missing key characters Amy and Evil Ed, who both survived Part 1. Charlie's now in college, he has a new girlfriend, and he's seeing a therapist who's trying to convince him that all that vampire stuff didn't happen. And basically we get the same movie all over again, but instead it's a female vampire looking for revenge for them killing Jerry Dandridge. And because of the gender swap, it's Charlie that gets transformed and must be saved by the girlfriend, with of course the help of Peter Vincent, vampire killer. But I say there's more than meets the eye here. The effects, all practical, are pure candy for the retinas. And this female vampire is aided by some strange companions, who have a lot of fun causing havoc with everyone they come in contact with. Coming in at number 21 is Once Bitten, came out in 1985. Before Jim Carrey became a huge comedy star, he starred in this John Hughes-esque vampire teen comedy, and I think it holds up pretty well. A centuries-old vampire, the Countess, has kept her youthful look by drinking the blood of male virgins. Since she finds this prey challenging to come by in the 80s, she's thrilled when she meets young Mark Kendall, who like most teenage guys is just trying to get laid. And unfortunately, his girlfriend Robin isn't quite ready. Once the Countess sinks her fangs in him, the power struggle between her and Robin becomes very real, culminating in an impromptu high school Halloween dance battle, which is totally not choreographed. What can I say? This is an 80s cheese fest of epic proportions. The clock is ticking and the Countess must make her final bite, while Mark and Robin must find a way to stop her. Coming in at number 20 is Abigail, came out in 2024. A group of trained professionals are hired to kidnap a young girl and watch her in a large mansion, only to realize that they are not the predators, but the prey for this little ballerina vampire. There's a great cast here with Melissa Barrera, Dan Stevens, Kevin Durand as Catherine Newton, Giancarlo Esposito, and Euphoria star Angus Cloud, may he rest in peace. There's some great carnage, and there's blood. Gallons and gallons of blood. If you like your vampire flicks bloody, this is for you. For me, the movie suffers a little in the third act, with some, I'll say, changes of allegiances, and an ending that had me scratching my head. Coming in at number 19 is Near Dark. Came out in 1987. This cult classic is really big in the horror community. But for me, it's just vampires in Texas.
The stars at night are big and bright. Deep in the heart of Texas.
Cowboy Caleb Colton meets gorgeous May, and the two have immediate attraction. But when May turns out to be a vampire and bites him, their relationship gets complicated. Craving for human blood, Caleb is forced to leave his family and ride with May and her gang of vampires. He doesn't realize this, but this is his new family. One thing I noticed was the cast had a lot of cast members from the movie Aliens. And of that cast, Bill Paxton stood out as a particularly vicious, heartless killer. As under the strong Texas sun, this group is powerless, hiding in fear. But once that sun goes down, they are apex predators who enjoy the hunt just as much as the meal. And once again, this is one of those movies where I didn't enjoy the final act, with Caleb discovering a solution to his vampire problem, and I'm having trouble buying any of that bread. Coming in at number 18 is the Salem's Lot remake, came out in 2024. Delayed multiple times and eventually dumped on HBO's Max app, no one expected anything from this movie. It does feel like it's missing a middle act, or at least some middle act scenes. But I gotta say, it won me over. You've got a young kid reading comic books to learn vampires' weaknesses, a la Lost Boys, and the vampires look fantastic with glowing eyes, giving for great imagery. You got nighttime scenes with vampires on rooftops, and those eyes just light up. The end is quite different from the original, taking place in a drive-in movie theater, and that's what you want in a remake, not just shot for shot, same old, same old. Coming in at number 17 is From Dusk Till Dawn, came out in 1996. Tarantino does his spin on vampires with on-the-run criminal Seth Gecko, played by George Clooney, and his paranoid loose cannon brother Richard, played by Tarantino himself, as they hightail it to the border by kidnapping a preacher's family and sneaking across in their RV. They end up in a topless bar named The Titty Twister, complete with Cheech Marin out front with a memorable monologue about a particular part of female anatomy. After a big dance by Salma Hayek that made a lot of young boys in the 90s grow up real fast. The movie does a complete 180 as the bar is home base to a group of vampires and the brothers and hostages must fight their way out. The rest of the movie is schlocky fun and action heavy, but for me, Hayek's dance is everything, all the way up to the point where she sticks her foot in Tarantino's mouth, which made me want to vomit. Those who know me will tell you, I absolutely ski feet. Coming in at number 16 is 30 Days of Night, came out in 2007. In a small town of Barrow, Alaska, which experiences a month of darkness every year, most of the residents head south for the border. However, those that stay behind end up lambs to the slaughter when hungry vampires descend on the town. Sheriff Eben, played by Josh Hartnett, and his wife, played by Rachel McAdams' clone, Melissa George. Seriously, are we sure this is not the same person? They lead a band of dwindling survivors who must try and last until dawn breaks over Barrow's month-long twilight. The vampires are terrifying, plowing through the townsfolk like wheat in a field, and I found it interesting as they communicated with each other almost like birds. Much like Near Dark, I found the solution to the vampire threat to be questionable in its logic. Coming in at number 15 is the Nosferatu remake, came out in 2024. Robert Eggers gives us Nosferatu, which in itself is a sort of German remake of Dracula, but with some obvious differences. The main one being Count Orlok, who is not the handsome gentleman that Dracula is, and watching this, I could not help but compare it to the 90s Coppola Dracula, which is more romance fantasy. Orlok, played by Bill Skarsgård, is quite different from earlier depictions, monstrous in size, and the way he drains his victims is downright sick. He's more of a plague infecting the fictional German town of Weisberg, even bringing rats right off the ship. The cast is stellar, with Willem Dafoe, Nicholas Hoult, and Craven the Hunter himself, Aaron Taylor Johnson. But trust me, it ain't Craven time. But the weakest link for me was Johnny Depp's daughter, Lily Rose Depp. I will be kind and just say I'm not a fan. She toes the line from insanity, epilepsy, and busting the proverbial nut. If you like artistic slow burns with lots of atmosphere, this is the one for you. Coming in at number 14 is Life Force, came out in 1985. We go from dark to wacky, as horror legend Tobe Hooper gives us, that's right, naked space vampires. During a space mission involving American and British astronauts, no, Katy Perry was not there, they encounter an alien craft. The humanoids within are brought aboard the shuttle. Back on Earth, one of the extraterrestrials, played by the stunning Matilda May, who's obviously a nudist, proceeds to suck the life out of anyone she comes in contact with. Make no bones about it, I can't show it to you, but she's walking throughout the movie full frontal and turning the town into a city of half-dead people. The effects of the life-sucking is something special. The level of detail is meticulous and a wonder to behold. Surviving astronaut Tom Carlson sets out to stop the alien presence. It's pretty wacky stuff, but I expect nothing less from a movie produced by the Cannon Group. Coming in at number 13 is Underworld Evolution. Came out in 2006. Surviving the events of Underworld, sexy-ass vampire Celine and werewolf vampire hybrid Michael are on the run as elder vampire Marcus is hunting them down. The creature design for Marcus, played by veteran actor Tony Curran, is why the movie's so highly placed. He is absolutely badass, being able to turn into a huge bat creature, and he is uber powerful, using his wings as weapons and absorbing victims' memories through drinking their blood. There's a lot less vampire politics here, but you do get answers to a lot of questions from the first film, as Celine searches for a way to end the war and the means to stop Marcus, as well as learn the secrets of her past. Coming in at number 12 is the Fright Night remake, came out in 2011. A Vegas reimagining of Fright Night with an extremely underrated cast, as Colin Farrell plays vampire Jerry Dandridge with the long effing smile on his face. Anton Yelchin, who passed away way too young, plays Charlie. Imogen Poots plays Amy. Christopher Mintz-Plasse, aka McLovin, plays a nerdier Evil Ed. And favorite of mine, David Tennant, plays Vegas attraction Peter Vincent. You've even got Hereditary's Toni Collette playing Charlie's mom. It's a fun remake because it doesn't follow all the same beats as the original, while suffering slightly from a little crappy CGI. Coming in at number 11 is Dark Shadows, came out in 2012. In 18th century Maine, Barnabas Collins seals his own doom when he breaks the heart of a witch named Angelique, played by Eva Green. She turns Barnabas into a vampire and buries him alive. 2 centuries later, he escapes his tomb and finds his home in 1972 to be a very different place.
Mephistopheles.
So you've got a fish out of water comedy with a pretty impressive cast boasting Michelle Pfeiffer, Jackie Lee Haley, Helena Bonham Carter, Bella Heathcote, and Chloe Grace Moretz. Although the focus is on vampire versus witch, you have ghosts, werewolves, and other creatures of the night. And kicking things off my top 10 is Blade, came out in 1998. At a time when comic book movies weren't doing too well, New Line Cinema changes the game with Blade, a half-human, half-vampire hybrid with all of their strengths and none of their weaknesses, except for the thirst. Vampires have grown to power, secretly infiltrating all levels of government. They're literally everywhere. And so Blade and his partner Whistler work in the shadows, hunting and exposing them. It's very martial arts heavy, with Snipes doing a lot of his own action. The movie kicks off with the famous Bloodbath Underground club scene, properly introducing Blade and showing just how much vampires hate and fear him. He eventually saves a hematologist, and you learn everything about Blade and vampires through her eyes. At the same time, wildcard vampire Deacon Frost, played by Stephen Dorff, is searching for a vampire blood god to achieve power. They're set on a collision course of epic proportions. It's very 90s, introducing the laughable CGI graphics that look like they were made off somebody's PlayStation 2. Coming in at number 9 is Underworld, came out in 2003. Under the cover of night, vampires engage in an age-old battle with their sworn enemies, the Lycans, a clan of violent werewolves. Kate Beckinsale plays Celine, a vampire orphaned in the wake of a bloody Lycan attack. She works for the vampires as a trained killer. When the Lycans take interest in a human named Michael Corvin, Celine struggles to save him from Lucian, the leader of the Lycans. There's great world building here, with the vampires' hierarchy centered around more powerful elders who take turns ruling while the others sleep. It does feel a little like West Side Story with vampires and werewolves, but with a lot of politics and secrets. I was not a fan of the werewolf transformations. The CGI looked pretty crappy there, but nowhere near as bad as Blade. Coming in at number 8 is Blade 2. Came out in 2002. Guillermo del Toro gives us a solid sequel, upping the stakes, adding a threat much more dangerous than your average vampire. After Blade rescues Whistler and devamps him, in a plot retcon that makes absolutely no sense, a new strain of vampire called the Reaper strain threatens both vampires and humans alike. To combat the Reapers, the vampires negotiate a truce with Blade, who reluctantly allies himself with them. He teams up with the Blood Pack, an elite group of vampires originally assembled to kill him. The design of the Reapers is downright terrifying. With the Predator-style mouth, you definitely wouldn't want to be bitten by one of these things. You add Norman Reedus of Walking Dead fame, and even Blade gets a new love interest this time. But for me, what makes this movie really cool is this X-Men style group, the Blood Pack. You kinda wish Blade had gone head to head with these guys. Coming in at number 7 is Bram Stoker's Dracula. Came out in 1992. The centuries-old Count Dracula comes to England to seduce Jonathan Harker's fiancée Mina and inflict havoc on the foreign land. I commend Coppola for using old-school practical effects at a time when they were falling out of favor. They shine brightest when you see Dracula turn from all manner of creatures, as well as a green mist and even a sunset. I've always felt they went too love story by expanding on Mina's relationship with Dracula, which isn't present in the novel. But the real red flags are casting Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder. They are two square pegs trying to fit in this round hole of a movie. My lord, who let Keanu Reeves try to speak with a British accent? That shit is cringy as fuck. And it's a shame because if you make these changes, this is top 3 on my list easy. All the elements are there. Gary Oldman, the Swiss Army knife of actors, plays a perfectly tormented Dracula, and Anthony Hopkins plays the wily and slightly touched Abraham Van Helsing. The scenes with Harker being seduced by Dracula's brides and the beautiful Lucy literally being a cradle snatcher are ones I'll never forget. Coming in at number 6 is Salem's Lot. Came out in 1979. The fact that it sits this high, being the oldest movie on my list, speaks volumes of how incredible this Stephen King adaptation is. An author returns to his hometown of Jerusalem's Lot in search for inspiration for his next book, only to discover that the townspeople are being turned into vampires. I saw the movie at a very young age, and that scene with the young boy in his bedroom being visited by a floating vampire outside his window, asking him to be invited in, was the stuff that nightmares were made of for young boys. The look of these vampires is very simple, but so effective. And then you have the master vampire towering over everyone with extra long fangs. It's one of Stephen King's best. It's a timeless classic, and it's the tits. Coming in at number 5 is Interview with the Vampire. Came out in 1994. Based on the novel by Anne Rice, it tells the story of Louis, played by Brad Pitt, and his experiences after he becomes a vampire in 1791. His dissatisfaction with his mortal life extends into his immortal life as he's turned by Lestat, played by at that time controversial choice Tom Cruise. Lestat is a particularly manipulative predator that enjoys the hunt just as much as the kill. To keep Louis from leaving, Lestat eventually creates a vampire family unit of sorts by turning a little girl named Claudia, played by a very young Kirsten Dunst. The look of these vampires is more on the, I'll say, elegant side. But more than that, you get to see the world through their eyes, which is most evident when Louis is turned. Unlike movies like Top Gun and Elm Street 2, I didn't have a clue on first watches. But here I noticed it almost immediately, the homoerotic undertones, as everyone is clearly fighting for Louis' companionship. Even Antonio Banderas shows up with an application. Coming in at number 4 is Let Me In. Came out in 2010. Bullied and neglected 12-year-old Owen spends his time spying on other residents of his apartment complex. He meets Abby, played by a young Chloe Grace Moretz, a strange girl who only comes out at nighttime. The two form a strong bond amid a series of gruesome murders. Yet Owen begins to suspect that Abby is hiding a terrible secret. This explores what a child vampire must do in order to survive. But make no mistake, Abby is absolutely brutal and terrifying. This is in fact a remake of the 2008 Swedish film Let the Right One In. But I've always preferred this one, being a fan of Moretz, and yeah, it's in English. There's a revelation at the end of the movie that not all was as it seems. And for me, that's what elevates this movie's placement. Coming in at number 3 is Sinners, recently released here in 2025. In 1932, identical twins Smoke and Stack, both played by Michael B. Jordan, returned to Mississippi, years spent working for the Chicago outfit. They purchased a sawmill to start a juke joint for the local black community. Their cousin Sammy, an aspiring guitarist, joins them despite opposition from his pastor father. Later that night, their music attracts a small group of vampires, led by their leader Remick. To call Sinners a vampire movie is doing it a disservice, as it is so much more. The movie is heavy on musical numbers, but in no way as to define it as a musical. And yet there are powerful musical scenes, one in particular that absolutely dropped my jaw, as it is something that should not work, and yet is perfectly interwoven as everything else is in this tale. The cast sports veteran Delroy Lindo, as well as Jordan, who I've been following since he was a scrawny little pup in HBO's crime opus The Wire. Young actress Haley Steinfeld also stands out, going from Hawkeye to Hawk Tuah, playing a much more adult role. Coogler's spin on vampire lore is that the vampires have a hive mind, sharing memories of all the ones they've assimilated, much like the Borg from Star Trek, which would make Sammy Picard, which is kind of funny. And my runner-up to this super vampire ranking is Fright Night. Came out in 1985. Best described as I Think My Neighbor is a Vampire, as teenage Charlie Brewster, looking to get it on with his girlfriend Amy, played by Amanda Pierce, who you might recognize from the TV show Married with Children, gets distracted when his neighbor Jerry moves in next door. Brewster becomes convinced he's a vampire. It's also no surprise when nobody believes him. Advised by his annoying friend Evil Ed, Brewster tries to expose Jerry, only putting him and his loved ones in danger. He has no choice but to turn to the only person who could possibly help, washed-up television vampire killer Peter Vincent, played by Roddy McDowall, who hosts Fright Night, where he showcases Hammer horror classics. Chris Sarandon plays Vampire Jerry to perfection by being unassuming when he needs to be, sexy and seductive like when he entices Amy in an 80s club in a very memorable scene, and intimidating when he terrorizes Charlie simply by being invited in by his mother. The effects, all practical, are what elevates this movie from average 80s horror comedy to something much more. Even the movie poster on VHS boxes in video stores made it super popular with horror junkies. And my number 1 vampire movie is The Lost Boys, came out in 1987. Brothers Michael and Sam move with their mother to Santa Clara, California. While the younger Michael meets a pair of comic book nerds, Edgar and Alan, the Frog Brothers. Michael, played by Jason Patric, soon falls for Star, who turns out to be part of a local gang of vampires. Sam and his friends must save Michael and Star from the undead. Sinners, it was all about the blues, and with Lost Boys, it's all about that 80s rocker influence. Kiefer Sutherland plays vampire leader David, sporting a platinum mullet with ultra cool attitude, spitting out lines with pure gravitas. His entire gang looks like they're about to drop the greatest metal album the world has ever seen. Audiences were not used to seeing vampires look like this. Santa Clara itself is almost a living character, as the boardwalk is alive with rebellious rejects. Enter oiled up, muscular saxophone guy, getting everyone hyped for what's to come. You've got the two Coreys, who would have a long and troubled career in Hollywood. You've got huge scenes, like their dog Nanook protecting Sam from his brother, the kids infiltrating the vampire's lair, and Michael versus David in Vampire Fight. Joel Schumacher was heavily influenced by the Lost Boys of Peter Pan lore. Hence the famous line, "You can never grow old, and you can never die." I've been very fortunate to have met a lot of cast members from both Lost Boys and Fright Night. I grew up watching these movies, and nostalgia can be a very powerful thing. From the BK from the city that never sleeps, peace, baby.
This is a Brooklyn-bound express train. The next stop is Brooklyn Bridge.
Stand